Welcome to Data Science demo. In this demo, we'll see how Data Science can help you to handle dynamic SQL queries. Dynamic SQL is included in text quotation characters, and Data Science by default doesn't have this option enabled to handle such queries. Well, let's see what do we need to do to enable Data Science to handle such queries, to parse text quotation characters and objects included in this text. First of all, we will look inside of the configuration settings of my PostgreSQL database prepared for this demo. Here's my PostgreSQL database. This database has a proxy enabled, right? And this proxy has a dynamic SQL handler host. So Data Science needs to have this port available, and the host should be available from the target database instance. Okay, the next step to make sure that Data Science is able to handle stored procedure calls and the function calls and handle dynamic SQL, we can find under System Settings of Data Science and additional parameters. Let's see what was changed here, and we see there are two: use metadata function DDL and use metadata view DDL. When we need to parse such arbitrary text in quotation marks, which is actually dynamic SQL inside of the functions and stored procedures, then we can also use these options and enable them, and then the Data Science dynamic masking rules can handle such option in their rules. Okay, let's see how to enable these two settings inside of the dynamic masking rules for the proxy mode. One of them is a mask card, which can help me to mask my credit card values in my test database. Let's scroll down and see what metadata is selected. Here is a customers table, test database, and a card is a column. Right? Credit card masking is a standard way to process the credit card. But what if we need to process the data inside of the stored procedure and functions? Then Data Science should be aware. Options that we have reviewed in the additional parameters can help us to activate these option boxes. So we can process queries inside of stored procedures and functions and views. Since we have enabled dynamic SQL, all these three options, the dynamic masking rule, these options, and the dynamic SQL host and port can help us to handle principally any query that goes through Data Science to the database instance, including dynamic SQL, right, inside of the stored procedures and functions or any other arbitrary SQL executed. Okay. Now, since this rule is activated for the card, we can look inside of the second one and just briefly review it. It's connected to my database instance and the PostgreSQL, right? But here in this case, I use email from customers table and email from the customer's password, and I'll process them with a function call. Instead of providing email values, I will slightly produce fancy usernames in the email. Okay, the masked column, which is email, will go there as a parameter, and my user-defined function will process that the way it should be according to the algorithm implemented. So we see that two rules are activated. If we will run queries through Data Science in the proxy mode, right, then if we will simply execute select star from customers or select star from customers' passwords, well, it's not so fancy. But if you want to see the real trick, what Data Science can do, we have to see the example I've prepared in my dbeaver application. There is my stored procedure, or actually the function called getTable, right? And there's a predicate, which is a text, that goes to my function as a parameter. And this is a grand hole in my security, actually, right? But anyway, I'm going to use it just for the demo purposes, Right, so anyone who will be able to execute this get table as a function and select from this get table function result will be able to provide a text as, let's say, the customers or customers' passwords, name of the table, right? And this is what I'm going to do, right? I'm connected through the proxy. So there's a proxy activated. So Data Sunrise is able to receive on the port 5433, right? And when I test this connection, I will see that everything is correct. The server response from the PostgreSQL is, this is version number 11. Now, since I'm connected already, I have this function inside of my database instance, inside my test database. The only step is missing is to test this function along with Data Sunrise options and two rules for two columns, email and credit card, implemented, right? So let's execute it. We'll see the result and we'll see what's going to give us. Okay, now we see that first that we can pay attention, this is a credit card, is masked. And we see the first 12 digits are covered, like we execute this regular select statement against the database instance, and Data Sunrise involves regular dynamic masking rule for this card column. What will happen to me email? Right? We see that these are invented usernames, right? Instead of real names, which correspond to my first name or maybe last name. Data Sunrise with the user-defined function I've selected, which is hide email, produces new email values here. So even when we use dynamic SQL along with Data Sunrise dynamic rules, dynamic masking rules actually, we can see that Data Sunrise can help us to mask even if someone is trying to use dynamic SQL. Thank you for watching.